Right, next part. So my little video clip comments about the clip and what Lip had said. Any comments about the idea of critical theory? How does it apply to our subject? And it applies to every single subject that you study, from business to finance to everywhere else. How does the idea of questioning everything apply? And why is it important in terms of leadership and management and honestly every single theory that you've ever learned? Anyone who would like to have a go? Just anyone can try. For me, it's about not accepting things at face value. I think it's an interpretive perspective. And some of the theories that we've been taught over 100 years, have a very strange tradition. They're part of a Western type American tradition. They're not always contextualized appropriately in terms of Africa and other countries. I also just think that we must stop accepting things at face value. I think one of the problems with the world is that people don't think critically about the nonsense that they are served. But that's exactly it, Ethan. We need to question absolutely everything. And even nonsense you hear on TV, whenever a politician talks, go and question, go and verify, go and my favorite word, fact check. Because this idea that because somebody in power or somebody who has had a theory somewhere in the world provides us with information needs to be questioned. As much as anything I say on this course should be questioned as well. Go, Georgia.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to mention it's really topical that you mentioned the politicians and the application of critical theory to that, because I often have discussions with my partner about the difference between listening to what your specific news channel says and the narrative that they're feeding you versus looking at different news channels and comparing those narratives and using that to come to a conclusion and not just one specific news channel, because they do have varying opinions.
Imagine if you're a believer in Fox News. Fox, which is so skewed that lied about the coronavirus or the coronavirus, that told people not to get vaccinated, while each of the people who, and I'm talking about Tucker Carlson, had received a vaccine. Donald Trump telling people to avoid vaccines when he has received the vaccine. There is a political agenda. Tucker Carlson now is currying favor with Russia as you can't imagine. And here you have an individual that is painting Putin to be this hero, that is this thing. Well, that's exactly it. And you have to watch it as satire. You have to watch it as satire. It's disturbing. I mean, I saw the spokesperson for Donald Trump, the blonde, apparently 27-year-old, I don't know what her name is, he'd fact check in real time. And instead of just saying, oh, I lied, just goes on this tirade about Trump being victimized. The question was, you said that this judge was appointed by Obama. He was appointed by a Republican, George W. Bush. That's it, Junaid. They doubled down on a lie. And if you really, it's a term that I used recently in relation to some, let me just use the term colleagues who had lied and then doubled down on their lie. Yeah, it's disturbing. So for me, guys, everything I say, every single theory is open for questioning. And let's look at that. Give me examples of theories that you believe could be questioned, stuff that you've learned in first, second, and third year. Things that we need to question, even paradigms that we need to question, in particular when you think of your own research. There's so much that requires questioning. And when you do research, it's about critical leadership. I mean, if I think of the topics that, or the titles that I'm supervising, there's a very clear indication that we're questioning the status quo, that we're questioning the things that we've got given to us as fact in the past. Give me examples of leadership theories, motivation theories, management theories that need questioning, that should have been questioned a long time ago, even though they appear in every single textbook. Yeah, well, absolutely. You see, and you're not allowed to say that, Maveshan, because somebody's going to be offended. But the truth is, we need to look at the principles behind that, 100%. Other theories, guys? Maslow. Maslow was used for how long? Yeah, there's no proof that Maslow is accurate. Yes, it's a simplified version of what the need levels of a person are, but my gosh, is that factual? Hertzberg, which is based on questionable information, but questionable assumptions. Go, Maveshan.
It's also, Doc, like with majority of people coming out of campus now and having the qualifications, they don't necessarily have the practical experience. Some of them are adaptable and some of them are not. And for those who are not, they don't get a second chance. But back then, when a degree wasn't that necessary, and people did internships in the sense where they worked on the job and they understood how things were, and then they backed themselves up with causes and education and bettered themselves at that job function. The working environments were much more different.
Yeah.
The achievement, the milestones, everything was a lot more clearer, and nobody lost their way along the way. Today we focus on things that aren't relevant at all, and we miss the objective and we achieve absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but the opposite can also be questioned, Boyo, this idea that after you study, you need lots of experience before you can land a job. I mean, there are qualifications that provide you with competencies that allow you to walk straight into a job, and yet we advertise plus 2 years or 3 years experience. We need to question that. I mean, 40-hour week. We spoke about how France reduced their work hours to 35 because the unemployment rate went over 3% around 2000. So there's so much. Well, that's exactly it. That's it. I mean, people are looking at 3-day weeks. So there's so many alternatives to consider. I think the idea that you start work at 18 in an organization and you retire at 65 because we want loyalty. The truth is, if you want loyalty, get a dog. So those kinds of things have to be questioned. It's the work processes, where we work from. I'm thinking of the people that I'm supervising, that we can have rooftop gardens, for example. Why must we have traditional massive piece of land? There's so much we need to question. So let's look at this from a critical perspective. So the first one, I love that statement because, and Ray Kroc is obviously the McDonald's guy. I think it starts with you setting your standards and reflecting your standards. And one of the standards we should have is we don't accept things at face value. We don't accept things simply because it appears somewhere in a book. Now, this is a bit before your time, but you guys can look up the name. Neil Simon wrote a play, Biloxi Blues, and you can look at Biloxi Blues. And there's a little poignant moment in the play where one of the guys in the army says, in a moment something appears in writing, people believe that it's true. If they hear rumors, then they'll question it. But the moment it is published, we tend to believe that this is true. Now, in a world where you have mis and disinformation, disinformation where you deliberately mislead people, where you have trolls providing information that is based on zero factual evidence, You have to start questioning. And you're right, Georgia Jade. You have to be very critical of people that tell you nonsense from a TV perspective. We cannot trust anyone and except trust ourselves. So if we look at, I'm not going to worry about that, we've done that. So if we look at traditional leadership theories, the first one, trait approach, that your characteristics make you a leader. I know this has been disproven 1,000 times, but again, there are instances, in particular during times of crises, that people turn to these hero type individuals, which, and let's be honest, heroic behavior is a trait, or being a hero is seen as a trait, and heroic behavior is based on the kinds of behaviors that you indicate. The second one is the need to change your leadership style depending on what situation you find yourself in. Path, goal, this notion that we can create an organization that when the organization is successful, every single individual in the organization believes they are successful, and the other way around. When every single person in an organization believes they are successful, the organization is successful. That kind of link between individual and organizational success. It is a utopian view of what an organization and followership in an organization can do. But who says that it's possible? Although I'd like to believe it's possible. And then the one that, my gosh, we have so much of that, impression management, where the way you create this impression, where the mask that you wear, where the noise that you make often will make people believe that you're some kind of special individual, some sort of hero. For me, when Zelensky went to the White House and didn't wear a suit and tie, people were offended. I mean, he's not there to impress with the color of his tie. I mean, Trump, who, gosh, there's a red, and on special occasions, the power tie, yellow or gold on. It's all impression management. It's all fake. It's all about creating some idea of what this person is. Give me examples of impression management that you've seen recently. And yes, fake it till you make it is impression management, but I still tell my students that. Give me examples of impression management, as we see it all the time. You see it all the time. Go for it, Mavesha.
So I'm obviously involved in facilities management, project management here at the Shark Stadium. Okay. And our stadium is very old. And with regards to all the challenges that we have in comparison
to
country, we experience a lot of spalling and spend a lot of money on like repairs on rust, for example, in the concrete around stadium and so forth. And then we look at a stadium like Moses Mabhida, who hasn't been around for that long. And then you look at the caliber of stadium management that they have on that side. It's all fake it till you make it, because nobody is qualified enough to identify risk at that stadium. Nobody's qualified to carry out the maintenance. Nobody is qualified.
Why do you think the Sharks haven't moved, boy?
Sorry?
That's the reason the Sharks haven't moved.
No, correct. That and for other reasons, but
yeah,
mainly on the fact that the stadium is now sinking, and now all of a sudden there's reason to come back and get professional outsourced people to come through and do the work of the people who were employed from the beginning.
Well, my favorite impression management is Cyril Ramaphosa, that tells us everything is fine, despite the evidence to the contrary. There's too many examples. Guys, emotional intelligence, remember EQ, the ability to understand and manage your own emotions, the ability to read others' emotions and behave in a way that is appropriate, and then the idea of charismatic leadership. So all of this is still relevant, but it is about questioning whether these are the only options available from a leadership perspective. And I know that one of the people that is doing research are not with me. I don't think I'm supervising the idea of adaptive management. So we're seeing new theories being brought into our studies. So the first one is this idea that leaders are in charge and that followers are automatically there to follow. This idea of a herd mentality. And yes, that is where the research is, and that's how people have viewed it in the past. And the problem with that is it emphasizes the importance of the leader at the expense of how important the followers are. When we think of organizations, in particular, when you look at job ads, the job advertisements essentially are trying to attract talented, competent people who are self-disciplined and can take the ball and run with it. And yet we seem to think that leaders are more important than followers. It's a skewed view of the world. Any comments on that, guys? Who thinks you need discipline from outside? Or surely if you appoint hotshot people, all you need to do as a leader is to stay out of their way so that they can be fantastic. Or is that simplistic? Who has a boss that gets in their way? And remember, what happens stays here. What happens here stays here. Where you are hotshot and you have an idiot that, yeah, gets in your way. Yeah.
Sir, I'm not a hotshot, but I have observed.
Well, you're not an idiot.
I have observed that mostly, especially with the youngsters that are coming into the working environment, they've got such vibrant ideas that could turn your business head to toe. But
Absolutely.
mostly the older generation and the older type of leaders, you then feel threatened, and you don't allow those individuals space. You start saying, you know what, wait your turn and things like that. So I have observed it, and it happens a lot, especially with the new generation type of people that are entering the working market.
And I think one of my students, I think it's you, Georgia, is looking at the next generation, Generation A, and their impact on the world. And it's going to be very interesting because I think it is you, Georgia. Hopefully I haven't got that wrong, because we're now moving into territory that's not been researched. But you're absolutely right, Boya. So in terms of critical management studies, so you can go and find stuff on the Frankfurt School of Critical Management. I think what it does, it again here, is this idea of saying and calling BS on the so-called received wisdom. Over time, theories have been developed and added and amended. I mean, some of the theories we use would be 125 years old this year. 125 years. What the heck? What can be relevant in terms of a 125-year-old theory? And then the second one is to realize that managers are a part of a bigger process, and that followers have a significant contribution and make a significant difference. But again, we default to leadership. There's not enough studies around followership. There has to be significant more time spent on followership as an alternative to leadership. Guys, and then just, this idea that we, again, question that leaders are more important and they're large and in charge, and it creates the idea that employees are expected to come to work, to park their brains at the door, because leaders will think for them when they're inside the organization. And it's about questioning the traditional hierarchy in terms of who reports to who. Now I was going to give an example, but it might cause me a headache. Guys, in terms of critical management scholars, I think the first one, I think it is to look at a view of leadership that we can learn from others who experience leadership as followers. It is about immersing yourself in the process to see whether there is a better way of arriving at leadership theories. And then the second one, this idea that this imbalance between power is a concern to followers. This idea that everything is vested in one individual is disturbing. Trump takes decisions on things that he knows nothing about. But you'll hear when you watch him and you ask him what he's expert at, he knows everything about everything, which is deeply concerning because no one knows everything about everything, except my wife, obviously. So, guys, in terms of your CMS scholars, the first one is this questioning the kind of pecking order that we have in terms of our power relationship between leaders and followers. The second one is that we have to start questioning the idea that leaders are more important and therefore, they expect us to share their interests. Again, when you deal with competent people. And then lastly, the importance of communicative action. I think we understand communicative action, and often it is top down, which is the opposite of what we expect. So again, when you look at job adverts, and it's deeply disturbing when you look at job adverts, they paint a utopia. They paint a picture of an organization that is empowering, that essentially allows you to be fantastic. And when you get there, it is, don't worry about it. Park your brains at the door. We'll do your thinking for you. And part of that communication is this need to move away from top-down nonsense. It is multi-directional. It is empowering people to take decisions that affect their lives at work. But it's also making sure that we allow platforms for people to give feedback. So in terms of critical leadership, so the first one, challenging the power relations. And why do you think the power relations that exist are often reproduced? Why are those power relations, which we know needs to be questioned, will be repeated and repeated and will become part of the organizational culture? And then also can be rationalized. We need leaders because leaders know what's going on. And then occasionally transform. What makes leadership styles become entrenched in organizations? For me, go for it, Nathan.
Yeah, Doc, I was just about to say that I think it might also be, they become so entrenched because, of the results that they yield. Perhaps, like if it becomes
okay,
something
can
like
be.
So
and from a positive perspective,
if it's like a tried and tested sort of style for a specific field, it might be something that might want to be replicated. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing. It might be that it does need to change, but people might be resistant to the change, and the organization might be resistant to change.
We call it a success groove. We've done it this way in the past. We're going to do it this way in the future. Very dangerous, though. I also think, for me, managers interact with, promote people who sound like, who look like, who say the same things than they are. So what you do is you go and look for your replacement as a mini me type thing, as a mini you. If you don't know what mini me is, then you should go watch Austin Powers. But where you promote people who think like, look like, and sound like you. So what happens is you constantly reinforce the idea that this is the leadership style that we want. And the truth is, I see it all over. If you look at managers and followers, or the next line of leadership, they look exactly the same as the previous line of leadership. It's disconcerting. And then we create this culture that this is the way we do it around here. Okay. Go for it, Nathan.
Yeah, Doc, just to add to what you're saying, like I know from personal experience of an individual who has run a certain business in a certain way for many, many years, and has then tried to try to find someone that can replicate and be their yes man. But it's very, very different, very difficult to to be motivated, like also like with your employees, to feel motivated in that type of way as well, or even as a leader to be motivated when there's no like chance of anything changing. If it's just basically copy and paste and then just get on with the work at hand.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, but can I also just say that it's deeply disturbing because the organizations never changed that. It
Yeah.
really doesn't change, and it must be hell of a disheartening. Also, the world changes. If you want to annoy me, because we sit and always now, let me stop. Let me just stop recording before I answer the next one. I sit in meetings with